Welcome back to the Red Dice Diaries, and in this video I'm going to be reviewing the Shattered Moon RPG by Tim Westhaven, and this will be the first of my reviews to feature a slightly more abbreviated and punchy review style, inspired by an excellent Deconstructions blog entry, which I'll put in the comments box below, and feedback received in response to my video review of the Orbis RPG, left by the Actual Truth on Google+. Thank you very much for your feedback, it's very much appreciated. So let's crack on with this new format. The product name is Shattered Moon, as I've said, and the author is Tim Westhaven. The genre is a sort of fantasy slash post-apocalyptic scenario, and I came to be reviewing this book because the author, Tim, was kind enough to contact me on my YouTube channel and send me a review copy. So thank you very much, Tim. What sort of central mechanic does the game use? Well, the game uses a system called the Fatestorm system, or Fatestorm VRS, which is a diceless system that uses fate points and the draw of a hand of cards from something called a fate deck to determine the outcome of challenges. And I'll put a link to an intro website down below for you. I like the fact with this system that the templates are provided for quick games and that a flowchart and summary for character creation is included. I must admit the character sheet looks very crammed, and I did find it a little bit bewildering with all the various sections and numbers on there. I do love some of the elements of the system. Using the tarot cards to add in a storytelling and narrative element to it, I think that's a great idea. However, the amount of stats and the various different merits and flaws seems a little at odds with this to me when compared to a more narrative-based card system like Everway, for instance. Okay, so what's the main theme of the game? The main theme of the game is that the destruction of the moon during an impact by an astrological object has caused huge fragments of it to rain down onto the earth, devastating the surface of the world, and freeing Lilith, one of the oldest and darkest of gods, who was imprisoned there with her allies, the Chthonic Nephilim, before the biblical Great Flood, by her peers, the other gods. The return of the Nephilim to the world and the raising of their crystalline citadels has broken the seal of Oberon, a supernatural barrier that kept magical energy from permeating the world. With the barrier removed, the ancient souls that slumbered in many human animal bodies, unaware of their true nature throughout many human animal lifespans, are now free to resume their original forms, becoming known as the New She. So how does the game go about portraying this? The game's punctuated by a number of newspaper clippings and materials from the world during the time just prior to or during this lunar-based apocalypse, when the newspapers and the news stations were still running. And these really add a great bit of flavour and give you an idea as to how the disaster was perceived as it was unfolded by the people of the world, the populace. It begins with a description of the catastrophe and follows with descriptions of the world as it is now, the default period of the game being some 40 years or so after the moon was shattered. And there's a nice map which is recognisably based on our own world, but twisted and altered and given a very interesting spin that very nicely conveys the setting. It's something that's similar to our own, but with a few bizarre twists thrown on top of it to change and warp the setting. The details of the setting of which are quite strange, but a compelling mix of different genres. It's like there's a bit of Mad Max thrown in there, some aspects which remind me of Shadowrun, i.e. the return of magic, some people awakening their heritage and mutating into fantastic races, analogues of orcs, trolls, etc. There's a pinch of biblical mythology with the mention of Lilith and the sort of biblical edge to the apocalypse. And there's some very evocative elements from traditional fantasy RPGs and mythology. The players take on the roles of the New She, fey souls that have slumbered throughout many mortal lifetimes and with the return of magic have recently awakened, transforming their bodies into what they once were. And these include such creatures as dwarves, elves, goblins, ogres, and trolls. As the name New She suggests, the characters are a modern reimagining of classic Fae, with versions of the classic Fae allergies and roles within fairy society, but given an uplift for a more contemporary setting. And this is all great and very compelling stuff. Personally, I love the fact that the ogres in the setting reflect the more sort of ogre magi, to drop a D&D reference, which portrays the ogres as strong mages and wise mystics rather than just brutish warriors, which makes for a far more interesting and compelling character option, in my opinion. So, my conclusions for the Shattered Moon game are that it's obviously a book that has had a great deal of work put into it. The author should clearly be commended for that. It looks beautiful, it's clearly laid out, and has some very interesting artworks, and the little newspaper slash bulletin clippings that go along with the text really add to the atmosphere of the setting, and that's a great thing which I think should be encouraged. The setting itself is an interesting melange of different ideas, a bit of post-apocalyptic, a bit of fantasy, and a bit of the end of days. Now, as a fan of mashup RPG genres, I find the background very easy to read and presented in a very compelling and engaging manner. In terms of the game system, I'm not entirely convinced. The main reason I've always thought that you should use cards instead of dice has been to cut down on number crunching and to add a more narrative element to the game. However, the Fatestorm VRS system using Shattered Moon doesn't really seem to do that, having just as many numbers and modifiers as normal dice systems. So I really don't see what benefit it brings to the game above and beyond using dice, aside from to make it different to other RPGs. And of course, it does mean you actually have to buy a deck of cards to go along with the game, which is a further expense. I must admit to having found the rule system quite bewildering, with its talk of personality archetypes, elemental affinities, and various different statistics. However, it's obviously approaching the rules from a simulationist standpoint, and it never tries to deny that. This isn't my personal cup of tea, but if you like that sort of thing, then this may well be the game for you. However, it's certainly not a game I'd recommend for newcomers to the hobby, or indeed a game that people are going to be able to pick up and run quickly. It does put me in the mind of some of the more old school RPGs that have a rule system that leans more towards the tactical wargaming side of things. And if you like that sort of thing, more power to you. It's not my cup of tea, but then you may find this game very enjoyable. Well, that's my review of Shattered Moon. If you have any comments about the new format or about Shattered Moon itself or anything else, please put them in the comments box down below. I hope if you've enjoyed this video or found it informative that you'll click on like and subscribe to my channel. Until the next time, I'll see you around.